Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Good morning. Rob Browne here with you live from the Cross County Elks Lodge in Parkin, Arkansas with fellow Moose, Lions, and Beavers. We have a lot to talk about today. We got a new Shriners Parade going on over in Levesque, Arkansas. Michael Jordan will be the Grand Marshal today. He's excited about that. Frank Duffy will join us from the mountains in North Georgia. Jasper, I believe, is the name of the town, not too far from Dahlonega, home of the runaway mine train. Kevin Scarbinsky will check in with us, the Birmingham Lede, also recently inducted back in April, the first weekend of April in Houston at the Final Four as the U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame, the first ever sports writer in Alabama to achieve such honors. On top of his brilliance as a writer covering football and all other things in the great state of Alabama. Chef Roger Watson, is he related to Doc Watson, the famous bluegrass singer? I don't know. We'll find out today. He could be because, you know, everybody up there in Virginia and West Virginia is Scotch-Irish, Celtic, and that's what he is. He's from the old country, from Manchester, England, not too far from the big city of London. All right, hour number 2, Kane Thomas will join us from Atlanta, talking some ACC. What are they doing to try to save that conference? Because, I mean, they've got to do something. Don't wait to be great. Don't wait for them to come knocking on your door. They got to have a plan. Tommy with the ACC Network, ACC road trip for a long time, played basketball at NC State. Hell of a guy, great story. I will have him on as well. May have a surprise join in as well. I know Doug Dean is down on Lake Martin listening today, just chilling out. Probably having a cup of coffee this morning, which a lot of people are around the country. Had a great opportunity to go out yesterday with Charles Hall, owner of Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Absolutely awesome inventory. They're bringing in new items every day. I'm telling you, men's and women's clothing, it's the place to go. They are not woke. They ain't going broke. They are great Americans. They're not just Americans, they're patriots. Charles has got his wife and his 3 awesome kids out there. You got Raven. You got a great staff out there. People like Frank Gaskins is in there and Chris Hall. Great regulars. It's an awesome place to go. They've got the second largest Filson dealer in the southeastern U.S. They've got new brands coming in. Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Vask, Light Boots, and Hire Boots. Hire, of course, invented the cowboy boot. And one more thing before we bring on Frank Duffy. Go Tigers! The first ever St. Paul Open. That's right. It will be held October 2nd, Chickasaw Country Club in Memphis, 8 a.m. Central. There'll be a dinner the night before. The proceeds will benefit the Bishop Peter J. Sarton Scholarship Fund. Call Michael Jordan. That's right. Hell of a basketball player. No, the Michael Jordan that I know, William Michael Jordan, 901-647-3014. Give him a call. Now, they've sold out of teams. Michael's over here with me right now, but he says they may be able to put some more in, but just call him and they'll do whatever they can. But they need flag sponsors, hole sponsors, and they need money, participants, volunteers, items donated in lieu of cash. And listen, man, Frank Duffy, Frank, not that you and I are talent scouts, but have you heard this new fella that plays music? Now, people were blowing my phone up with him yesterday. I don't know if you know this guy or not. He may be living up near you in the North Georgia mountains, but let's have a little listen to this fella. He's pretty good.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is.
This guy's
Living
incredible.
in the
But
new world.
I don't know where he lives or whatever, but this
that's a
guy's
man
name.
fed up. That's a man that's fed up. I'm right there with him, brother. What the
Yeah.
hell happened to this country? Holy
I
mackerel.
know. And you know, Frank, I tell you what, not only are you a great American, great LSU Tiger, but you're a patriot. And you brought it up on the show. And, you know, when Riley Gaines was on here, I'm thinking, here's a 22-year-old. You know, I've got kids that age. And you do too. And her mom and dad have done an incredible job of raising her little brother who plays college football at a small school in Kentucky, her sister, the top gymnast in the state of Tennessee. And she said, you know, I got up there and it's just me. You know, where is everybody? Where are all the people standing up for women's sports? And you said it on the show one time, crickets. Brr, brr, brr.
You know, supposedly all the feminists who were supposed to be out there, you know, protecting women and, you know, they're doing it all for their women's rights for the last 50 years. There's nobody rushing to these young ladies' aids. And the fact that they got to play biological males in whatever sport it is, it's just disgusting. And look, you know, I got a son and a daughter, and I'll tell you what, if and they were both swimmers. They were both really good swimmers. In fact, my daughter still holds a Georgia record for the backstroke a 10-year-old backstroke up here in Northwest Georgia at the district meet. She still holds that record. It's now like going on like 12 years. But if they were in that situation, what I would do is I would tell my daughter, I was like, honey, you know, the system has let you down. If she was competing against a biological male, and I would tell her just very simply, look, God made us different. He just did.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's military combat or athletics. You know, look at my sport that I love being in, racehorsing. You know, every now and again a filly can outrun a colt in the Kentucky Derby. It's happened, I think, 3 or 4 times. But the odds are the colts are just much stronger. They're much bigger. And they're faster, and they're going to win the race, even if a female does get into the race.
Let me, Frank. Don't mean to interrupt you. Let me ask you this. What is this fella's name? My research people are on here. Anthony. Okay, his name is that guy playing that music there. Oliver Anthony reaches #1 spot on U.S. iTunes chart with powerful blue collar anthem "Rich Men North of Richmond." I'm gonna tell you what, this dude, he's got a haunting voice. Not remind you of Bill Monroe, Doc Watson? I mean, he's as they say up there in his neck of the woods, he's powerful.
Well, hey, let me tell you something.
But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me say something.
You're fine. Let me tell you. You said he sounded like I'm in the North Georgia mountains. Right about 30 minutes from where I am, as the crow flies, is where they filmed Deliverance. So let me tell you, normally when I hear banjo or guitar notes, I look over my shoulder, just you know,
make you a little nervous.
And by the way, I don't want to get too much on a political rant, but sure doesn't that young boy that was playing that banjo and Deliverance sure looked like our present president a little bit when he squints his eyes.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. And you know. What I'm going to tell you something. You're right. The thing about the Colts and the Phillies, that we're almost 150 Kentucky Derbies in. Okay, and there's only been 4 Phillies win and 145 Colts win. I mean,
correct. Yeah,
that tells you everything. That's incredible statistic. I mean, I did not realize it was that big a deal.
Yeah, it's just genetics, right? And look, that's why the Horse Racing Association, Churchill Downs in particular, are smart enough to have the Oaks on a Friday where it's only the fillies, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we're smart enough to do it for the horses, and by the way, the animal kingdom's far smarter than we are, because let me tell you something, they would never vote in these idiots to run the joint. They would have the strongest Mustang running the pack, right? But they would never go outside of what sanity is. And so here it is. We've got races for the fillies, which is correct. The Kentucky Oaks, which my good buddy Tom Amos won with Serengeti Empress 4 years ago. And then you've got the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, and you know, for again, the girls can run. but it's normally predominantly won by the Colts. So, and then you put this on a human scale. I mean, you tell a young female swimmer, or wait till they start getting into tennis and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got somebody that can crush a backhand down the line. It's just inherently unfair, is what it is. And what this gentleman is thinking about is those of us who love this country and who love the fact that our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents gave us a country to be proud of. We're just looking around and going, well, how in the hell did this thing get off the rails like it did?
Yeah. And you're right.
It's disgusting.
It is. And you know what? Riley Gaines pointed out that now Sage Steele, who I think was recently let go by ESPN. I wonder why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's beautiful. She's really smart. Samantha Ponder. They've stood up and now they're backing her. Martina Navratilova, great tennis player. But why is not everybody? Because as Riley said, you go in the locker room, there's a 6'4" fully intact male named Leah Thomas. Yeah, give me a break. Yeah. But let's moving right along, nothing is here. But this kid, Oliver Anthony, I say kid, really talented. And I'm telling you, the theme of this show is Maury Gaston and John Hearn and Robert Durham have given us his history, traditions, and heroes. And you think about just the people, the free speech, the First Amendment's alive and well on Sidelines. And that I'm not seeing Tucker Carlson running back to TV. I'm not seeing Megyn Kelly running back to TV. You know why? Because they don't have to worry about Rupert Murdoch coming into Megyn Kelly we have the right for free speech. So let's get into something. I'm going to ask you a question. Kevin Scarbinsky will be on here. Chef Roger in just a minute. And he goes, what are we talking today? And I said, recipes for tailgating. So going to be fun. But here's the thing I want to throw. We've always suspected there was malfeasance and tomfoolery and, crazy stuff going on in recruiting under the table over the years. Merely speculation.
We all heard the stories. We all heard fables and all the stuff. Yep, we all heard them.
So here's the question I'm going to ask you, Frank, and that is, now that it's all out in the open and it's technically legal, it's not supposed to be pay for play, but it is. I wonder if anybody is going to come out and say, honestly, a coach at a big time school and say it isn't any different than what we used to do.
Well,
who will have the balls to say that?
Lane Kiffin's really kind of been saying that. I mean, you got to give it to him. I mean, he's like the guy in the Roman Forum that's pointing up and saying the emperor has no clothes on, right? He has been, and look, everybody used to wink and nod, and I've heard all the stories. I've heard some of my LSU stories. I heard about a briefcase of cash going to West Jeff to get Gary James to come in when I was in school. I mean, it goes back 1,000 years, right? And look, where there's smoke, there's fire. So let's just say it was the good old boy network for all those years. If you got away with it, good. What was the saying from the Untouchables? The problem was you got caught. That was the problem. It wasn't a problem if you were doing it and you were getting away with it, right? That what do they say? Rubbin's racing, right? But now it is all out in the open. And I kind of I'm really starting to kind of think we might start waxing poetically for the good old days when it was done underneath the table, because now the dirty laundry's out, and when you're paying a kid $1 million to represent you, and the kid decides he's going to be calling it quits after game 2 because he's got a hangnail, all hell's breaking loose. So there was something to be said when this thing was done underneath the table. I mean, there was some decorum. There was honor among thieves. Let's put it that way. That old saying, there was honor among thieves.
All right, Frank, quick one for you. Last year, you mentioned you had 3 LSU friends who were business owners in the great state of Louisiana, the sportsman's paradise, who were supporting NIL with 3 different LSU student athletes, football players. Mm-hmm. By the time they got to the bowl game, all 3 of them had quit. As an employer, and I cannot imagine I mean, my head might explode if
well, not even a lawyer. It's almost like you're an advertiser, you're a marketer, and you're paying a quote unquote company to represent your business, your brand. You're basically marketing. It's no different than me running ads on 680 The Fan here in Atlanta for Duffy Realty, and then all of a sudden they're gonna lose the signal. Well, that's happening with this NIL stuff, right? You're paying some guy, you paid a chunk of money to a particular wide receiver, and that wide receiver pretty much just shuts down. Okay, well, I want my money back. I mean, that's coming, Rob. Lawsuits are going to fly on this. The only thing that will keep it from happening is the bad press. If you were to try and sue a former player, a player. Everything in life is contractable. So we don't know what was in those NIL contracts between parties. So there might have been contingencies in there. We're not privy to that. But you're going to watch, if it's not in there, if it's not implied, you're going to see lawsuits happen when these players decide, you know what, I'm going to be out of this.
Yeah, you just lost him. And Frank, we lost Frank there for a second. maybe he's being censored. Wow, I don't know, but he'll be back. But Frank, I'm with you. Frank, we lost you there temporarily. But the lawsuits about failure to do your part on the contract, I'm just wondering, are they having written contracts certified by lawyers and disinterested third parties and all? Okay.
I don't know that for a fact, but look, everything in our business, just like you with Rob, everything's got to be contractual, everything. And I would think if someone's going to be, forking over $500,000 or $200,000, $100,000 for some lineman or some wide receiver or some running back or quarterback to say, I love, Durham Cadillac, I would think that there's going to be a contract signed. And then maybe in those contingencies, hey, maybe it's a proration. I don't know. But I do know this. If I paid somebody and they didn't perform on that side of the contract, I'd be upset. I'd be weighing out, is it better for me to go after this guy or do I want to let a sleeping dog lie, not to upset my family?
Hold that thought. We're going to take a break. We didn't put the old finger up. We're on that tight break Saturday. We're going to come back. Brilliant description, Frank Duffy. We'll be right back on Saturdays. Sidelines. All right, Rob Browne here. I have been accused by now 2 people here in the great Lee Hall of stepping on Kermit. You don't like Kermit? I did not step on the frag, but Frank, I've been accused of stepping on a frag, as they say in the a frag. Kermit. I did not step on, but he's dead. He's on the floor. He's dead. Murder on Music Row. All right, Frank, you're right about a contractual obligation. From Duffy Realty, 21 years, almost 45,000 homes have been sold. Every one of those homes that you sell, there's a contract involved. Why don't we have a 17, 18-year-old kid? Now, the question is, can a minor enter into a contract? Okay, that's what you got to be thinking about. But attorneys, that's what they're there for. Got to have them. But like Lauren Smith says, well, you get some young fella comes out, his pillows too hard and his mattress isn't soft enough, and like a fool, he just leaves you. I mean, but that's what you got to be careful of. I mean, and Frank, I'd be madder than a wet hen if I was supporting somebody and they just walked away. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so let's get started. First off, Frank, are you up for a road trip to go back in the hollers in West Virginia and find this Oliver Anthony guy and have some cocktails and ice cold hams beers with him to hear him play music? If you heard 15 of his songs yesterday, the guy is unbelievable. Oliver Anthony.
Well, I will tell you, I love West Virginia. When I got out of our business in Louisiana, I got on with the American Express. I was one of their salespeople.
Yeah.
And my buddy Lester was actually stationed in Charleston, West Virginia. And I had an independent sort of position right out of that before I got hired on by Discover Credit Cards. And so I went to West Virginia and I worked there for about 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And you talk about one of the most beautiful states
Oh my
in
God.
the country. It is fabulous. On weekends, we were so centrally located. Of course, we were both single at the time. We would go into, Cincinnati for a 3-game series. We'd go to South Street in Philly. We'd go to Atlantic City, New York. But the weekends that we would have in West Virginia, we would whitewater raft down the New River, which was incredible. The Upper Gully. It's just a magnificent state. And you know what's really cool about West Virginia? It's so different, all the different parts. So if you go up in the northern areas, it's the Rust Belt. You go down toward the south, and it's really Virginia. I mean, you're in the agricultural 1870s of the South. Out west, again, you're right up on Kentucky. You're heading out Huntington. Just incredible area. So it does not surprise me that a musician comes out of West Virginia, kind of almost like a John Denver sort of situation, where he has that love of America, that love of the heartland. Stranger to blue waters. You're in the heartland of America. It would not surprise me that young man would be able to be a talented singer and then sing about the values that he's singing about.
Yeah. Well, we sat out there at Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, one of our proud sponsors, yesterday afternoon with the owner, Charles Hall, back in the boot room, over 7,000 pairs of boots. Charles said, I got a great idea. He pulled up on YouTube and played on the music system throughout the store, which looks like just something out in, Jackson Hole. It's incredible. And on YouTube, and we listened to about 15 of Oliver Anthony's songs. And he wants to start doing music night in the boot room on Thursday nights, and have cold. He has a couple of taps with cold Irish beer, and have people sitting on stools out there in the boot room and listen to someone like this. But it's grassroots, Frank. It's populist. Right. It's like when you go down to an LSU game and you got a Zydeco band. I mean, like I said, we got the Lake Charles boys. How about these two Cajun names? Blake Klein Peter and Tanner Smith. It sounds like two characters on Leave It to Beaver. My friend Whitey and Gilbert and Blake. But give me some good Cajun names. Fontenot, Broussard, Gajan, Hokie Gajan. Remember him?
I mean, the greatest names actually have played for LSU. Lacouture. Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. It's all that French influence, right?
Clyde
and look, speaking of, you're talking about being, where you sit around and your front porch society and you put your boots up and, I'm sure somebody will have a bottle of Browne somewhere around where you can throw a couple ice cubes in and enjoy yourself. But that's the America that we love. That's the America that fostered college football. That's the America where a Sewanee team could come out and go undefeated on an 8-game, 15-day cross country tour of the South and win every one of their games. I mean, that's what toughness was. That's what America, our what we believe in, what the standards and the traditions of our country, and this woke crap that just is gone. It's out of control. And look at the backlash of things like the movie that we went to the last couple weeks ago. I mean, the place was packed and it was it was like, okay, we're seeing what's happening to our country and we don't like it. And it's the silent majority. Dick Nixon talked about this in the late 60s and early 70s. It's this behemoth who does things right. They pay their taxes. They believe in God. They believe in family. They believe in country. They'll defend. They'll go die on foreign shores to protect your right to be a jackass, to burn an American flag. You know, they believe in that. They believe in colorless society. They do, because we're all, you know, God's children, and I'll defend that person. And this new divisive throwing people against each other and pitting people against each other, it just is not American. It's not right. And so you're finding out, you're seeing this happen. I mean, look, I'll never forget when I was at and again, I'm not want to get political, but when we were at the LSU Alabama game in 2019, when we were on our way to the greatest college football season of all time. Yeah. You know, Donald Trump was in the stands. He came into the stands. And when I tell you, when they announced his name, it sounded like Alabama's. In fact, I think that was a louder cheer than Alabama got on any one of their touchdowns that day, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it's just that we've had enough. You're going to start feeling and seeing the backlash. Yeah. And where we go to enjoy and where we go around our quote unquote tribe is on Saturday afternoons with other like-minded people. You're not going to get that. It's like the song in a small town. You can try that in a small town. Try that in Jordan-Hare walking down the Tiger Walk. You try that on the Indian Mounds at LSU on a Saturday afternoon. All hell's going to break loose, brother. Yeah. You try that even in a liberal bastion of Athens, Georgia. You better not try that, you know. So
you're Frank.
It's
you're right. And that's what we love about it. Like, you know, Phyllis, you and I had that great conversation with Phyllis before the LSU Alabama game. Phyllis from Mulga, you know, she was on Paul Feinbaum's show a lot. She died a few months ago. And I had a conversation. I got home one night on a rainy night in November, Friday night, and I got a message because I had called her. Someone gave me her number, a mutual friend of hers. And I called her. We talked for about an hour. And she represents the grassroots populist movement that is college sports fans. She said, you know, we grew up poor. I hate it when I don't ever want people to ever say they grew up with nothing. If you got a mom and dad and God's first in your life, you're richer than a billionaire atheist any day of the week.
That's like us. We have a lot, but I never
godless. Yeah. So she said, we grew up and listened to Alabama football games on a big old radio on the front porch with my 5 older brothers. And she was raised Catholic. It was interesting. And so she talked about, she loved Tommy Tuberville. She, you know, you see her on TV and you think all this stuff. These people behind this, like Larry from Shelby, that's a great guy. They took care of Phyllis. There are so many great stories out there. Just blue collar, Joe Sixpack, whatever you want to call them. They're the best people in America. I mean, I'm going to tell you something. Yeah, you got to have donors to write those checks, but I'm going to tell you something. That good old Scotch-Irish Celtic that is the culture in the South are the first people to fight. They're the best people, and that's why they love football. A little more Oliver Anthony. Check this out.
Can it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is. Living in the new world.
I like that, living in the new world. But I'm going to tell you something. You know, Frank, everybody talks about, well, NIL and the portal are ruining college football. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm going to tell you something. When you and how many more commercials can you see? Oh, with the economy being the way it is. You know what? The economy, it's your economy. What's your economy? Yeah. Quit getting into this group thing. Yeah, college football.
Ron and I used to talk about all the time. I said we just choose not to, we choose not to participate in the recession. We
choose not to participate in group misery, group failure. You know, if everybody on the sales floor is screwing around and not calling people, does that mean you're not supposed to call people? In fact, what I think it means is call their clients while they're goofing off. That's what I do. I'm going to tell you something. But here we got so much happening with football right now. But you look at the interest, Frank. LSU, my God, we had Scott Rabelais on. That's a great one, Scott Rabelais. And you know what Audrey goes, she was posting the show. What is Scott Rebelsis' Twitter? I said, it's Rabelais, it's Rebelsis. I'm like, you know, what do you get from the Queen of Collierville? But anyway,
I got a good buddy, Paul Rabelais, and he and I watched the LSU College World Series a couple games together. So good name.
Scott, I met him at SEC Media Days. Man, what a good one. What a good egg, as they say over in the country. But man, and you and Jacques Doucet over at Channel 9, WAFB Channel 9. Now, as the goobers over there in Mount Airy, North Carolina call it, that you mean Jack West Dowsett?
Jack West Duckett.
Jack Quick Duckett, yeah. Jacques Doucet. That guy's awesome. And I'm gonna tell you what, and then Jimmy Ott, the Ott father. We've got some incredible people, 4 great people covering LSU for us. And I'm going to tell you, Frank, college football, you look at the folks down there in Auburn. My God, they've sold every season ticket. Tennessee has a 6-year plan on season ticket growth. They're not even 2 years into it, and they've broken every goal they've got. So all these people out there that are telling you, well, it's just easy to sit on your butt at home and watch your 84-inch flat screen and go blind, by the way, looking at that TV in your man cave, and they're not going to go to the games. My dad is old enough. He's listening right now. He's born in 1928. He said back in the 50s, people were worried people would not go to college football games anymore. You know why? Because they were putting them on TV. What did it do? It made people want to go. And in the 80s, in 1984, the lawsuit, Chuck Ninus, the CFA, Oklahoma, and Georgia getting more games on TV. What did it do? It increased more people. You know, you watch a show about cooking and food in New Orleans, and you live in Memphis or Atlanta, or you live in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. What do you want to do? Listen, Myrtle, by God, my wife Sharon Jean and I, we're going to head down there to that New Orleans and go down there and see that chef down there that rides around on the golf cart. He's so big. We're going to get some of that Cajun food down there. Yeah.
Well,
see,
I will say that, Rob, I don't know what the power of the laws of physics are, but my gumbo just tastes better in a parking lot outside of Tiger Stadium than it does anywhere else in the damn world.
It's awesome. And watching you, here's the thing. MJ and Audrey and I, a few weeks ago, Tanner Smith, again, in the Cajun Hall of Fame for great Cajun names. Tanner Smith's making this dish the other night. It took him 6 hours to make it. It was finally ready at 11:26 p.m. We're going, can we start a little bit earlier? Now, bass. Most people don't eat bass, okay? People say, well, it's not a good fish. Well, he takes bass, cooks it up in MJ in the big black cast iron skillet, and they did some seasoning to it, and it was called, fish, and they called it Couvion, as you said, fish stew. But the great thing about the Cajuns is they can take something that's fairly mundane, very pedestrian, and give a Cajun name to it, a French name to it, and all of a sudden it's the rage. Like, let's be honest. What is blackened redfish? It's redfish is a drum, isn't it? But Paul Prudhomme, the chef's so big he rode around on a golf cart. He blackened it, seasoned it, and made everybody want it. Chef Roger Watson is climbing up the telephone pole behind Oliver Douglas's house right now to call us here in a minute. But when Chef Roger calls in, Mr. Haney's on the phone here. Mr. Douglas, this here's only been dropped once. It's on sale for $9.99. Oh my God! Don't you love Mr. Haney? Pat Buttram was his name.
Hey, I love Mr. Haney. He's my senator.
Your senator from Louisiana is Mr. Haney.
By the way,
John Kennedy.
That's right. He is absolutely Mr. Haney. I love it. And I tell you what, he's bamboozled.
Sigma at Vanderbilt, by the way.
You don't want to be a liberal sitting in that chair and being grilled by the Senate Judiciary Committee. But I will tell you, you talk about Paul Prudhomme. There was actually such a run on redfish that they almost wiped out the entire population, and it's kind of a trash fish. It's not that great. I mean, there's drum and pompano and fish dolphin. I mean, there's a lot of snapper. There's a lot of great fish that's actually better fish than redfish. But when he put it in that blackened skillet and just doused it with the seasoning and let it caramelize. This was like 1986, 1987. Dude, you couldn't even get into a restaurant that was serving black and redfish at that time. In fact, he even said he actually had to go in front of the legislature, if I remember correctly, and then ask them to put limitations on the harvesting of the redfish. I mean, the Cajuns, the Louisiana, and it was not just Cajuns, it was us in New Orleans. every seafood restaurant was doing black and red fish, and it was
Really?
wiping these poor fish out. Yeah, it was crazy.
See,
But
because I didn't think about that. I mean, I remember back in the 70s, people wouldn't touch amberjack because they said it's got worms in it. And I love amberjack. You know, a good amberjack fillet with butter in a skillet with great seasonings. Amberjack served over a fresh bed of risotto is incredible. You know, I feel like where's Julia Childs, boys? Now my mother used to love to watch Justin Wilson. He would do a couple of things like my friend Warren E. Bud Ritchie from Alexandria up here in Memphis. About every 2 or 3 minutes, he'd sit there and just go, aye, for no apparent reason. What does that mean?
That's our old dean of fraternity affairs. I was on the other side of a few capers from old Bud Ritchie.
Dean Wormer, he is. Hey, when the finger goes up, we got to take a quick break. Hey, my goal in life is to be the kind of person my dog thinks I am. Notice the sign over my shoulder. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you. Kevin Scarbinsky going to be joining us here in just a moment. Looking forward to having him on as we always do. And, you know, Frank, one of the funny things about it, we've been having a little bit of problems with and, you know, a little bit of problems with technical issues this morning. But anyway, I'm getting a lot of comments going, man, you guys are on fire speaking the truth. And we are. You know, look, we're not a political show, but there comes a time when you cross that line and you start messing with sports, you're gonna get pushed back. And a guy like Oliver Anthony, a very talented musician. And we were up in Nashville for SEC Media Days, walked down Broadway. We were supposed to have, there's a group called Midland, a country group. They're going to have a street concert, and they had it all, and it rained. And, you know, there was thunder and lightning, so they had to call it off. I get it, man. But so we went into the food hall, and we heard this music, and I was like, oh, my God, is that a CD or what is it? Live musician playing up on the stage, and there's this young lady.
Broadway.
And I mean, this girl was so, and still is, so talented. She was playing country, little rock. She played an ABBA song, you know, that group ABBA. And I'm like, oh my God, her name is Lauren Vale. Keep your eyes and ears open for her. You know, not that we're, you know, the Colonel Tom Parker, you know, no, we discovered them. Frank and I are going to come listen to you. But think about that. I think about Oliver Anthony, and wow, there's some incredible places. Nashville, they should have SEC medias there every year. Every year. That oh my God,
I love going there. It's awesome. In fact, I went 2 years ago with my buddies when Georgia played there. Started off the season on their national championship run, and we had a blast. In fact, we did 680 The Fan. We did it from Nashville. From one of the bars, and it's just a great scene. It's a fabulous. And I went to Nashville to go see my boy Joe Burrow play when Cincinnati went there and played in the playoffs, and stayed in town and just hung out on Broadway, you know, to some of the bars and some of the restaurants that after the game. It was kind of it was an earlier start, so it was over like around 7:30, and it's a great vibe there. It really is. I mean, it is it's a cool place. It's got great restaurants, great bars. It's all concentrated, which is also really nice. It's a pedestrian sort of place.
Yep.
So yeah, I love going there, and LSU, we go there every now and again. We actually went to Vanderbilt in our 2019 year. In fact, that's when we emptied Vanderbilt Stadium, Commodore Stadium, out of all the liquor before kickoff of the game had started.
You took them to 0.
Yeah,
well, it is a great place to go.
Yeah, it is.
Downtown Nashville, like you can walk everywhere you want to go, but over 1,200 people were there at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, great.
I was talking to an LSU Tiger who's up there, Herb Vincent, who's now in the SEC office, Director of Communications. What a great man. I mean, and I always make a point to say thank you for everything you do to make this possible. And again, over 1,200 people there. He said, some guys don't want to come because it's too crowded. He goes, hey, I get that, I appreciate it. I respect that, but they're going to be over 1,200 people there. So a lot of people do want to be there, but man, they really do. They do it right.
It's like you said, do you want to stay at home and watch your game on HD TV, which don't get me wrong is nice. I mean, if I can't make it out to Missouri for the LSU game, I will put my feet up and have a road soda and, enjoy the game from HD. But let me tell you, if I've got the ability to get to a game, there's no comparison. Well, same thing with SEC Media Days. Why wouldn't you want to be there? You're talking with all the other people that love college football, love the SEC. Look at my hat. This is not an LSU hat on the floor. It's an SEC hat. It was from the SEC National Championship. They normally are. The SEC Championship game in 2001. And by the way, it is really cool. I don't know if you can see the date on there. What's interesting about that was this was supposed to be the date of the championship, but it was the week later when we wound up playing Tennessee because of 9/11. This was from 2001. And you know who played on this date that's actually on this hat? Auburn and LSU, because remember, our game wound up getting pushed back because it was the weekend of 9/11. So when you got this brand, this logo, SEC logo right here, and you got an opportunity to go to SEC Media Days or anything SEC, you got to do it. Why would you stay at home? That would make no sense.
Yeah, and let me say this real quick. We're all old enough to remember when there were technical difficulties on the show. So we've had a few little technical issues this morning. This is one of my favorite ones of all time. Do y'all remember? Tell me if
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Yeah, and by the way, Kevin, I guarantee you, Kevin knows this one. This was one of the Paul Feinbaum show's episodes when Mildred was talking about her love affair with Coach Bryant, and
I even heard that. That was crazy.
Paul Feinbaum goes, we'll go to a break. It came back. He goes, wow, I thought she was dead. But Kevin, we're having a lot of fun this morning. The coffee's flowing. Frank's up in North Georgia. We missed you last week. Now, have the boys gone back to Gainesville yet? You're going to have both of them there in Gainesville this year.
No, this is the week. So
okay.
I've got one more week before I'm officially an empty nester. So we'll be down. I don't know, Frank. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Frank. I don't know if my wife's ready for me not to have the boys around
It's a strange feeling. Take her out to dinner so y'all can reintroduce yourself to each other. But here's the thing. We call it the Freedom Tour. When our daughter went off to LSU, in fact, she's starting her senior year literally on Monday. Her senior year starts. It's amazing how fast it goes. But that was the thing when we dropped her off that day. We literally went in Bengal 1. We went straight to Sedona, Arizona. We excited about being on Freedom Tour. So y'all enjoy. I know you can do your writing and do your editorials and everything from probably wherever you are. Y'all go and enjoy yourself and be untethered. Y'all will have a blast.
Well, hey, Frank, that's a good point. That's one of the joys of technology is, I don't have to go to an office to do what I do. I can I can do it from pretty much anywhere that has an internet connection. So, and where I live in a remote area of northern Jefferson County is if we could get internet here, which again is not always reliable, but for the most part it is. Then I can pretty much do it anywhere. So that's good advice, Frank. I appreciate that.
No, it is funny because he's right. Like I've got, 2 boys and a daughter, and then I remarried. I got a 4th now. So when they're around, it keeps all the attention from being focused on you, because there's those 3 or 4 that y'all. But you know what? I got them in Richmond, Charlotte, Atlanta, and Moose, Wyoming right now. I mean, all over the country. Now I got a couple of them coming back. My daughter and son-in-law are moving back in next month from Richmond to Memphis, and they are and they're IT geniuses. They're going to be helping Nigel and all of us with some stuff on this show. But man, I'm glad to have them back. And but that's part of it. But Gainesville, you're very familiar with that place. I want to, Kevin, we've been talking a lot about a lot of stuff this morning. Looking at football right now, with what's happening in the Pac-12, and that's been a long time coming. But again, I'm not cheering the demise of football on the West Coast, but I'm wondering, are they going to have some of these games, maybe Kansas City and Omaha and St. Louis might be the midway point for some of these Big Ten matchups with these new, members from the West Coast? Because what makes a conference is the contiguous footprint and the fans traveling to each other's campuses and knowing each other, working with each other. And in my case, I'm married to Evolve for life. I got 3 of mine are Auburn. My oldest one now is Alabama. That's what makes it so damn fun.
Familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
But also, there's no other conference, and they do it occasionally to mock the SEC, but there's no other conference that chants the name of the conference and means it.
Yeah.
Even though, it's one of those things, you can't say that about my brother. Only I can say that about my brother.
Exactly.
And so there's a family there. And I give Mike Slive a lot of credit because remember when he became commissioner, there was the sniping, the backbiting, the spying, the secret witnessing was maybe at an all-time high. And
the deposition.
Alabama was headed towards probation. Kentucky was headed towards probation in football. There was the Alabama-Tennessee feud was
people were getting served when they were walking off of planes.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you had lawsuits. You had Philip Fulmer avoiding coming to media days because he didn't want to get served, and he showed up in a speaker box. We're all sitting there in the room listening to him, looking at a speaker box because he wouldn't come to the event. So Mike really, that was a big part of what he did, and his wife Liz too. They made it a family. They made sure they had these big Christmas parties and all these things they did to make it feel like more than a job. And they they did a great job in moving the conference forward in that way. And you don't see that in other conferences. Yeah. You just don't. And it's true. There's a passion for football. I think we get spoiled in this footprint because this is the ultimate, right? In terms of people that love the sport. But they love their team at Oregon State. They love their team at Washington State. But it's not on the same level, but they do. And so you got to feel for those folks that don't have a place. They will have a place to go. But the way this whole thing has gone is if you remember college football when it grabbed you, when you said to yourself, hey, I got to be a part of this. I'm a fan. This sport, I love this sport for whatever reason. And whenever it happened for you, it is sad what's going on. And I'm glad, I got to tell you guys, I'm glad that if, as reported, 4 different schools in the ACC have said no to Cal and Stanford. That's absurd. To me, it's absolutely absurd that you would have a conference that's all up and down the Eastern Seaboard and then Cal and Stanford. Nothing against Cal and Stanford, but come on, what are we doing?
Well, we're going to bring Tommy Kane in here in just a second. But, you were talking about when Mike Slive came in, the paranoia of schools in the SEC. Everybody thought everybody was spying on each other. Does this ring a bell? Do y'all remember this famous scene?
JW. Now, this fellow's from London, England. He's an Englishman working in cooperation with our boys, a sort of secret agent.
Secret agent?
Browne.
I mean, you can't help but think about that. But Tommy Kane.
Hey, we got some great Louisiana characters. That the sheriff ranks up there right up high with all of them.
Well, Sheriff JW was incredible, but you're right about that. And Tommy, want to get you on, and Kevin, it's Tommy Kane. He worked on the ACC network for a long time, did ACC road tripping on, played basketball at NC State. And Kevin was just inducted back the weekend of the Final Four in Houston, U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. The only writer, I think, in Alabama history to achieve that honor. But Tommy walked on at NC State, played basketball, was a manager, and the day before the Duke NC State game, they said, hey, man, you're playing tomorrow. Be ready. One of the great stories from Wilmington, North Carolina. But I love it.
Hey, I got to tell you, Tommy, one of the thrills of my life, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I'm not sure why, but I was a huge fan of that 74, that NC State team with obviously David Thompson was my favorite player. When he fell against Pitt in the NCAA tournament, I wrapped my head in gauze, and the next time I went to the playground to play. That's how big a fan I was.
I love
and
it.
Monty, and I don't know if he still is, but a few years ago, he was coaching at a high school in Gainesville.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah,
He's
been coaching ever since he left school. Yeah.
And I got to meet him, and I got to introduce my sons to him, and they got to shoot around some. I was in heaven.
You talking about like Monty Towell was. I mean, you see him now, you would think, how in the world could that guy ever play? I mean, he's a tiny little man, but he's nice as can be, and he loves the game of basketball. That's for sure. So, Kevin, I got a question for you though. When you went to the park with your rap, were you jumping as high as David Thompson too, or just?
I did not, not without a trampoline, and not even then.
I love it. Hey, I wanted to say this, and Tommy's on with us a lot. I met Tommy through Maury Gaston. Maury is like Merv Griffin. He's the connector. You know, you go down Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. Who loves you, baby? You know, tell him Telly sent you. But the connection here, Tommy, passionate NC State fan. And I'm, in the interest of full disclosure, if you can't tell, I'm an Auburn grad. Frank's LSU. Kevin's Troy in Florida. Tommy NC State. I don't want to see the ACC blow up. And I think that they need leadership and whatever. So, you know, Florida State's mad. Clemson, they want more revenue and all. Well, that's what Texas did that drove everybody out of the Big 12. And now that Texas has gone to the SEC, these schools are coming back to the Big 12. Tommy, if you were the commissioner, I'm going to pay you, I'll start you at $3.75 million a year with a car allowance to be the commissioner of the ACC. How can you fix this? And I love it because Tommy's a traditional guy. He loves the ACC. I love the conferences, but how could you fix it? And we'll talk about it.
I mean, come on, Rob. That's an impossible question to answer. I mean, I think I'll tell you what I could do. I could win the lottery and give all that money to all the schools to stay in place.
Yeah.
Because,
I
mean, look, the ACC is I agree with Kevin. I heard his comments before. It's ludicrous that they're going to go across to the West Coast and try to get some schools. Now, academically, from like a standpoint of that, is it great? Of course, Stanford. I mean, world renowned. I mean, Cal, great education school. So from that standpoint, but that doesn't pay the bills. That doesn't bring the money in. That doesn't make sense to the purist of of college sports. I mean, especially when you're talking about the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's not the coast, the Pacific and Atlantic Coast. It's just stupid. I just think it's not worth doing. It's not the right move. What they got to do, in my opinion, is they got to somehow woo Notre Dame to just agree to play and get and be involved with football and be part of like full in conference member, all that stuff. But I don't think that's going to happen either. If I was the commissioner, that's where I would be focusing all my energy on, is trying to figure out how to get Notre Dame to stay and be in the conference full bore. And then I think you can. Then I think you can really move forward with an iconic name like that as far as the conference and football, and keep the Florida States happy, keep Clemson's happy. Yeah. And look, guys, Clemson and Florida State, you back up 15 years ago and the same thing's happening. Clemson's not even really in the discussion because they haven't had all the success. They're in a position of power because of the success they've had. That's the only reason why.
Tommy, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. I want to continue with this because you're on a roll, and I want to hear the rest of this. We're going to take a quick break. This is Saturday Sidelines College Sports Roundtable. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Man, I tell you what, I love that music in between breaks. It sounds like an old Clint Eastwood spaghetti Western, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But Tommy, you were making great points before the break, and keep going.
I mean, I just, we just mentioned it earlier, Rob. Like, I'm a purist. I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. When I was in school, when I was growing up, there was the 9 teams of the ACC. All the coaches were there for decades. The Terry Hollins and the Dean Smiths, and then the Dick Sheridans and all the Mac Browns, all the great football coaches that were in this conference. And they were there forever and ever. And you knew all the players. There was no transfer portal. There was no NIL crap. It was just pure, quote unquote, amateur athletics. And it was great. And now I'm just, when I even read the article the other day about Cal and Stanford, I was like, oh my gosh, come on, people. But this is the world, unfortunately, that we're living in. It all comes down to the almighty dollar and everybody wanting a piece of the pie and a piece of the money. And the ACC schools see the SEC schools getting paid $30 million more a year and everything else, and they're pissed and they want a piece of the money. But it's just, in my opinion, guys, it's just ruining college sports. It really is.
For my friends in North Carolina, it was heresy for them to go down to Florida and get Miami and get Florida State. That was heresy.
No question.
I mean, going out to West Coast.
No question. I remember when I was in school, we brought in Florida State, and the first year in basketball, Florida State was in the conference, and they ended up winning the regular season championship. If I remember correctly, they had Sam Cassell and Bob Sir and Doug Edwards. They had a great team, and they came in and rolled to the ACC, and everybody was like, "Whoa!" Because nobody wanted. I mean, and then when we went to the whole Syracuse and Pitt and Boston College, I understood it at least they were on the East Coast, right? At least it was somewhat on the East Coast. But I understood it from a geography standpoint, as far as like wanting to get the TV rights up in New York and all those big places. I mean, that made sense. And I was okay with the fact, because it was still on the East Coast and it was still like, hey, broaden the footprint, do whatever. Yeah. But guys, when you're talking about the West Coast and then you start talking about, I mean, think about the teams like the women's softball and everything that's got to travel all the way across the country, play a game, travel all the way back, and then go back to school and all that stuff that's going to impact those kids. Like, travel is hard enough of being a student athlete. Now you're talking about going back and forth across the country almost every week. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, they certainly can't go into the Atlantic Division. And if you go into a coastal division, you got to ask which coast. That's not right. That doesn't work. Which coast?
Well, Tommy, you just hit on a fundamental problem here of all of this realignment. All of the decisions are based on football and football alone. And the dollars that it drives based on television media rights packages. But there are a lot of other sports going on at these schools, and those sports play a lot more than once a week. They play a lot more regular season games than 12. They travel a heck of a lot more. And with the concerns, and thankfully has been a greater spotlight put on mental health and the needs of our young people. I mean, I've talked to psychiatrists and psychologists. It is an epidemic, depression, anxiety. These things are mounting among our younger generation. And now you're adding, as you said, travel is difficult. Anybody who's traveled across the country knows it's, you got to recuperate almost after
good luck to the UCLA.
It's worse flying west to east than east to west, in my experience.
That's right. Good luck to the Rutgers volleyball team flying out to UCLA and back when they've got midterms. Good luck with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at some point in time, you would hope that somebody would step up and say, okay, let's talk about the health and well-being of the student athlete as opposed to like the almighty dollars and everything else. Like, how much money do you really need, Clemson? How much money you got a ton of money from all your success over the years. How much more money do you really need?
And it goes a long way in Lake Esso.
That's But if your enrollment's off the charts, your tuitions are now probably double what they used to be before you had success in the program. Florida State the same way. Like, how much money do you really need? Like, keep the schools intact. I mean, keep the conference intact, and just. I mean, I get upset about it, man.
I'm with you. I mean, Tommy, you're making great points, and like the cost of tuition and all. But again, let's say, you're in vet school, pre-vet, or I don't care what your major is. You're in college. You're coming in, and let's say there's there might be a few weather delays in the winter from the East Coast, the Northeast Coast, trying to get out. So instead of getting back late Tuesday night, you're getting back Friday morning. You may be stuck there for 2 or 3 days. And what about, hey, man, my family gets to drive 3 or 4 hours and see me. Well, forget about that.
Well, and to Kevin's point, look, football's wagging the tail here. I mean, that's the problem. But some of these conferences are not the football heavy conferences. I mean, it would be disgusting if there was no Tobacco Road basketball rivalries again, or if that was changed in some way. I mean, that's what we're not thinking about. I mean, the rest of us, the SEC heavy, Big 12 heavy, and Big 10 heavy, we're football centric. But the ACC, their bones, their traditions, their heroes are on the hardwood.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Kevin, I don't know who the Rick Pitino, didn't he say put football, make it separate? Did he say that? Somebody said that, but Kevin, what about that? It's its own island, and everything else just stay in the old league.
And I don't know how that would work logistically, if it would work logistically, but more and more football it's its own animal.
Yeah.
It is different even than major college basketball. It's just different. And I wonder if at some point we aren't going to have to do that to make this work. If you still want to have an intercollegiate athletic program and you want to offer tennis and swimming and track, etc., that's not compatible with where major college football has gone. So are we going to, this is one of my concerns, and maybe this is the answer though. At some point, all of this expansion is going to lead to contraction, that we're going to have a 30 to 40 team national college football league.
Yep.
And that's not going to include Vanderbilt. That may not include some of the schools that are in Power 5 conferences now. But they're going to say, because that's the one thing that's why the SEC works. You don't hear people complain. You don't hear people at Alabama saying, why does Vanderbilt get the same cut of the pie from the conference as we get? Why do you don't hear that from a financial standpoint. Everybody gets the same share. Now you make more based on your performances, and that's as it should be. But for the most part, when the SEC says, okay, we gave out $42 million a year to our schools, Vanderbilt got it, Ole Miss got it, Alabama got it, LSU, Auburn, et cetera. And you don't hear sniping about that. That's what we're hearing from the ACC, as Tommy said. You're hearing it from Florida State. You're hearing it from Clemson. Hey, we are drawing more eyeballs. We're bringing more attention. We're filling our state. Why aren't we getting a bigger cut of the pie? And when you get to that point where you have that internal, hey, wait a minute, I deserve more than him. Yeah, that's when conferences start to pull apart.
Yeah. Tommy, ACC, there are a lot of people over there, but when, maybe I don't know, with Syracuse to Miami and everywhere in between, but the original footprint, how about getting Maryland back? I miss Maryland being they're an ACC school. They're just not a Big Ten school. West Virginia, traveling all the way out there. You think the ACC could tell Syracuse to join the Space League or something and get West Virginia in there? Now, my brother-in-law played for Virginia Tech. He's from Rich Creek on the border of West Virginia. 5 kids in his family, raised by his parents in the mountains, all graduated from Virginia Tech. He traveled for 41 years, did all of his banking business in West Virginia and the Carolinas. Man, the hatred of West Virginia and Virginia Tech. But there you go. There's interest right there. Do you see that happening, Tommy?
I mean, Rob, look, if they're going to expand and if they got to try to quote unquote keep up with the Joneses with the SEC and everybody else as far as all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, to me, it just makes sense if you're going to expand where it makes sense. And that's up and down the East Coast. We're up and down the East Coast. I mean, that's what makes sense to me. And you might, let's face it, West Virginia, not the academic institute of the Stanford and not the accolades of a Stanford when it comes to just on a national scene. But that just shouldn't make any difference. Like, just keep it local. I mean, West Virginia's got great programs. They've had good basketball teams over the years. They've had good football teams over the years. they've had, they've got a good programs, but yeah, go into this. Okay, we need to get bigger. We need to make a bigger footprint. We need to keep our schools all together. Let's expand where we can on the East Coast where it makes sense. And I just think that that's why I was glad to see those 4 schools, including my alma mater, say, no, we don't want to do the West Coast. It just doesn't make sense. And
and something else that's getting lost, and you just hit on it, Rob. This sport was built on rivalries. And those rivalries were regional. They were, state within a state. It was, obviously the ultimate Alabama-Auburn that I've known over the last 30-something years. And you can't have those kind of rivalries, or you can't have them to the same extent. The bigger the conference gets, the less it feels like a conference, because the fewer times you play the other schools in the league. You get to 18, you get to 20. That's one of the great things about what the SEC did with the 8-game football schedule, even though they got a lot of criticism for staying at 8. Yeah. But the way they're going to do it, it sounds like they're going to be able to – you're going to play every school in the conference. If you're a senior, you play 4 years, you're going to play every other school in the conference at least once, home and home. That's the way it ought to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw this at y'all. I want to throw this at y'all and just answer it. I think what too many people are trying to act like they're these mega billionaire businessmen when they talk about conferences. We are fans. And what I am is an advice aggregator, like a quarterback. We have this great panel here, Hollywood Squares right now. And I'll say I'm Jonathan Winters, and the rest of y'all are all smart people. But think about this. Y'all are both right. We want rivalries, or are we going to try to make all these decisions based purely on money? Because, I was told one time by a girl I was going out with, she said, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. And you think about this, we're ruining it. We need to get back to, but my point is, we watched recently on Netflix, the Hatfields and McCoys, a 3-part series with Kevin Costner. Man, they did not like one another. But in 2003, they signed a peace treaty, 138 members of the family. But West Virginia, the Golly River, the New River, there are 5 Class 5 rapids on that river. There's no other river like it. The state of West Virginia, my dad said the toughest thing he ever did as an architect was try to drive around the state and find enough flat land to build buildings. There's not a lot of it there, but it's a culture. And those people, how many people here have ever been to Morgantown, West Virginia?
Me. Love it.
Okay. I've been all over, but I have not been to Morgantown. But Tommy, NC State, the reason 40 years later, we still talk about Jim Valvano running around, because that was I was in the chapter room at 715 West Magnolia with a house full of my Sigma Nu fraternity brothers watching that game. We went nuts.
The greatest missed jump shot of all times. The greatest missed jump shot of all time.
Yeah, and then a guy like Kevin goes out and writes about it.
Hold on now. Yeah. Frank, let me just tell you, Derek Rittenberg's a buddy of mine. He will tell you every time you see him, it was the greatest pass ever in the history of basketball.
He says that was an assist. That wasn't a miss.
Oh yeah, that was an assist. He'll tell you right away he knew what he was doing. But look, like you guys, let's go back to what you were just talking about with the rivalries. Like, to me, let me just throw this out there. Saturday afternoon, you wake up, you look at the lineup, whose games or whatever. How sexy will it be to see, Wake Forest is playing at Cal today? Like, what? Like, that is nothing. I mean, that's just, I mean, I don't know, man. I just the rivalries to me, especially when you talk about in the basketball world too, like Frank said earlier, like the ACC is basketball. I mean, we've had some success with Clemson over the last couple of years, and Florida State's held their own throughout and Miami back in the day. But when you talk about like ACC across the country, people are going to say basketball. That's what they're going to say. It's just basketball, right? That's what everybody knows about it. The great rivalries of Duke and Carolina and all that good stuff. But you're going to just water that down with going up to the West Coast to grabbing people like that for other schools and things like that. It's honest. If they're going to expand, and they have to, if that's what they need to do, then just make it up and down the East Coast and at least have some tie in there. Like West Virginia's got some great heritage of their basketball from big names that came through a long, long time ago. So there's some history there. They like their basketball, but
well, and you have the rivalry with Virginia, UVA, West Virginia. You'd have that rivalry.
You got in-state rivalries. You got people that look rivalries. really just stem from like guys going to work in the office and sitting around the water cooler talking about, I went to Virginia, I went to Virginia Tech. We got to play you guys this weekend. That's where the fun is in the rivalry, but you're not going to get that when you're like, hey, we play Cal this weekend and then we got Stanford next weekend and like whoop-de-doo. I mean, just,
And look, there's precedent for that, Tommy. There's precedent. Look, it's hard to get ginned up for LSU, Missouri. It just is. And we even played them back in the 70s. I mean, we've had series with them. It's hard to get ginned up for that. And, all this bringing in stuff and you're trying to force fit stuff. They tried to force fit a LSU Arkansas rivalry, even came up with some fakakta boot to get. It wasn't there. It was always forced. So You're right. You've got to keep these natural rivalries and going across country. I mean, the Pandora's box that is opened up by USC and UCLA have go play Rutgers, Maryland and Rutgers, and UCLA and USC is a cluster. It is going to be rife with problems. And look, pick the sport. Like to Kevin's point, the big sport's great. Get on a plane and go. What's the golf team going to do? What's the volleyball team going to do? What? I mean, it's madness, and it's madness run by money.
Yeah, let me throw something at you. Kevin, you're from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And when I interned up in D.C., winter quarter of 87, several weekends we went out to the Poconos and Camelback and Silverback skiing, home of the heart-shaped tubs, remember the great stuff on the Love Connection, whatever. But if you really want to go skiing, you go to Beaver Creek, you go to Vail, you go to Whitefish, Montana, whatever, for the serious skiing. But my point is, Tommy's been in a lot of movies, y'all. He has his own production company, Pack Productions, out of tribute to the Wolfpack. Tommy, if you're doing a movie, you select site locations, you go to the right places. You want a rivalry, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. There's one. Pitt. How about Pitt and West Virginia? Those backyard brawls. I mean, we're going to a break, but we've a lot of the people that are making these decisions, and we're going to come back, and Kevin, I want you to answer it, have basically had football lobotomies, kind of like Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He said he's as meek as a lamb, and Chief had to go in there and put a pillow on his head, and that was it. But we don't want to get to that point. We got a great round table. Tommy Kane up in Atlanta, Kevin Scarbinsky, North Jefferson County, Frank Duffy, whereabouts unknown, Daniel Simpson Day, has no grade point average. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
We're talking here on the Hollywood Squares Roundtable. Kevin, along that line, and Tommy, a movie, the director, and they go out in advance, they find the parts. But Kevin, I've heard more stuff that makes sense out of y'all three today than I have in a long time, because you're right. Let's just get back to the damn regional rivalries. Your next great piece that you write, and you write a lot of them, could you do that? I mean, would you what would you say if you were going to write, someone said, Kevin, I want you to write me a Pulitzer Prize winning story that's going to make people think about, let's get back to some common sense.
Well, I kind of touched on that in my newsletter, the lead item on Thursday. And this was touching on a lot of these subjects, but I looked at it. I thought of Linus from Peanuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Charlie Brown didn't know what Christmas was about. And Linus saying, I can tell you what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. And he goes out on stage and he says, lights, please. And so I thought of that. I can tell you what college football is all about. And it's Alabama Auburn. It is the kick in 85, Van Tiffen. It's the kick 6 in 2013 with Chris Davis. It's handprints and footprints at Denny Chimes in Tuscaloosa. It's Tiger Walk in Auburn and Rolling Tumors Corner. And what a cool story this week that those trees, the replacement trees, to replace the replacement trees, to replace the trees that were poisoned by the lunatic Harvey Updike.
Yes.
That those trees are now hardy enough that they can actually roll those trees, the Tumors Corner oaks. That's what college football is about. It's tradition, it's family. There's a great video on the Auburn University website, on their Twitter, and it's talking about this. And it starts with, and it gives you chills, even if, and I'm not an Auburn, people accuse me of, Alabama fans accuse me of being an Auburn fan. Auburn fans accuse me of being an Alabama fan. But there's a great video on there.
Never.
It should give you chills. The first thing you hear is Jim Fife's voice saying, I'll see Auburn wins. I'll see you at Tumors Corner.
Yeah. And
then there's a little boy on the shoulders of what must be his father, and he's looking up in awe. There's toilet paper flying everywhere, and it's just, that's what college football is about. And I hope we don't lose that.
Yeah. Again, Kevin, you're so gifted at that, and you've become one of us. I mean, you're from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, but your family moved down here, in high school. But you're proud of where you came from. You understand it. Penn State, Pitt, man, I missed that rivalry. That's another. I mean, why? You know what? We're stuck on stupid. Let's get back. These rivalries are fun. Like the trading floor, where I worked for years. We had fans of all the. The traders would be getting into it with the salesman. But like, hey, I need to fill that order though. But they would get you your order. But that.
Hey, Rob. Speaking of Penn State, Pitt. Well, I was growing up and I was a Penn State fan. I was actually enrolled to go to Penn State when my dad's company transferred him to South Alabama. And I had just graduated from high school. I didn't want to be that far away from my family. That's why I moved south and ended up going to Troy as an undergrad. But I can remember a T-shirt. And it is, I can't say the word, I can't say every word on the T-shirt, but there was, picture a Nittany Lion, the mascot, the Penn State mascot, sitting on a commode. And there are 3 words on the T-shirt. The second word is on. The third word is Pitt. The first word rhymes with Pitt.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
The humanity of it all. I mean,
those used to be bloodbath games. Those were must-watch TV. I mean, Penn State, Pitt were huge games, 60s, 70s. I mean, you had some great players in there, and it was always for something. I mean, they were, and Pitt was normally the spoiler in that game. Penn State was always the higher ranked team under Joe Pa, but I remember those very well. Pitt, West Virginia, a fabulous rivalry. The backyard brawl. I mean, that's where I first heard about couches burning in Morgantown. I mean, that's great.
Hey, Frank, you should be a huge Pitt fan, because if not for Pitt in 2007,
that's right, absolutely,
in the backyard brawl, beating West Virginia, LSU doesn't play for the national championship.
We needed
West Virginia.
We needed 7 things to happen that day for us to get into that national championship game, including like Boise State, Hawaii at 1:30 in the morning. The win totals, those BCS points for that game, put us on top. And when I saw Mark Richt getting interviewed in a darkened Butts Mere building in Athens, I knew we had it. When they didn't have the lights and everybody was celebrating, we knew we had it.
Well, you know what was crazy? That was like winning a 7-game parlay in betting. We know how tough that was. That's why you hear guys on the post-game score show on the Auburn Network, guy going, listen, I'd like to know the Shippensburg State and Slippery Rock score, because he's got a parlay.
Ohio State knew what they were getting when we got in. We were playing on casino money. We had hit the 7-card parlay, and we were throwing money around on Keno like it was crazy. That's
you think about that 13-7 when Pitt beat West Virginia in 2007, Paul Rhodes was the defensive coordinator for Pitt, and then he moved down to Auburn the next year. And 6 games into that season with Tony Franklin and the 4 wides, empty set backfield, Auburn had only given up 67 points the first 6 games, and then the wheels fell off. But Tommy, talking about
3-2, that was the 3-2 year.
Yeah, the 3-2. That was 2008. Was so bad it set football back 50 years. Tommy, we're talking about this Tobacco Road. You know, you're right. Like, you go to New England, there's a lot of good lobster fishing. I'm sorry, you go to Sardis Dam in Mississippi, they got crappie, but they don't have lobster. You're right about it. They have good football in the ACC, and at times, you know, like right now, Clemson, Florida State looks like they're coming back. That's what we're trying to do, is make everybody the same. And you're right, Tommy, they're screwing it up. I wish you were on ACC Network now, because what we're not hearing enough of, because everybody's constrained by, I get it, their paycheck. But Tommy, you're a truth broker, and you're exactly right about these rivalries. And who were the 4 schools that were the most vocal about, hey, Cal and Stanford, you're good schools, but you're on the other side of the country? Somebody smart made them. I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, I mean, it was North Carolina State, Clemson, and Florida State. I mean, okay. The 4 schools that said, nah, that's not going to happen, at least from what I've read, right? You know, I think what you have to talk about rivalries too. One of the things you have to talk about is, like, rivalries develop over time. It just isn't because we're in the same state doesn't mean like this, for instance, East Carolina and Duke, not a rivalry for that. I mean, you know, if they were to play each other in the same school, the same state or whatever, it's just not a rivalry. NC State, East Carolina is a little bit of a rivalry because of the history of what's happened between those 2 teams. Whereas the East Carolina did something and stormed our field one time when they beat us at home or something like that. And it became a rivalry because we were pissed, and there was a history there. And there was a reason to be pissed, and the reason you want to play them again, and the reason you wanted to kick their ass the next time you played them, because last year they stormed your field. So that rivalry kind of developed over time, right? It kind of developed because of controversy or something else happened. So
kind of like when a head coach goes and coaches your rival and they win 6 national championships. Like that.
I've heard about that, Tommy.
That would never happen.
Not that I'm bitter or anything, but yeah, like that.
I mean, that would be crazy if that ever happened. But yeah, you're right, Frank. So my point being is that that makes it develops a rivalry. But the fact that the matter is too because that happens. There's a controversy or whatever happens, or a big play or a big upset that initiates and sparks the rivalry. It is also because the proximity of where they are. They're in our state. They're right down the street. And all those people that went to East Carolina are now talking crap about how they beat NC State in football, blah, 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 and it builds it. If that same thing kind of happens where somebody's in Cal, and Cal comes over and beats, like, let's say Clemson's #1 in the country, and Cal beats them, and there's a big controversial play, that's still not a rivalry. It will never develop into a rivalry ever. Because nobody's going to – the fans aren't going to talk crap about it. They're just going to be like, you know what I'm saying? So – that's why you got to keep the schools on the same geography, the same footprint. Like, keep them on the East Coast. Let those rivalries build over time. Let their controversies build rivalries. Let the guys talking around the water cooler build the rivalries. That's how you build them. You know,
if visceral doesn't work without vicinity.
And you know what? This is really, I don't think this got enough play. Greg Sankey's interview the other day on the Paul Feinbaum show, where he said something to the effect that the SEC, obviously, they're going to keep their eyes open and their radar up, but they don't. How did he say it? They don't see anything out there worth going after. And I thought that was that was an important statement, because if the SEC were predatory, if the SEC wanted to say, hey, Florida State, if you could figure out that grant of rights thing, come on. Clemson, come on. The SEC could help precipitate the demise of the ACC the way the Big Ten did to the Pac-12. Now, the Pac-12 made a lot of mistakes, plenty of mistakes on its own, but the Big Ten certainly helped. And really, the last domino was when they took Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
So at a reduced rate, by the way, they're not going to get a full share. I don't know. You know, they'll now 50% of a lot is probably better than 100% of a little, but still, that's a money decision. But the SEC is really key here, and the fact that they, through all of these different expansion eras, mini eras, they have not been predatory, gone out and tried to reel in more schools. I think they're happy with 16. I think they'd be content, and I hope that continues. I hope they don't feel the need if the Big Ten goes, you know, they go to whatever this number keeps rising to. I hope they don't feel the need to compete by adding more schools just to
but in the giant game of risk that we're playing, they've got the dice in their hands.
Tommy, okay, along the line of what Kevin said and Frank, I'm going to throw it at you again. There are schools like NC State, which are so inherently ACC. I mean, they're the perfect fit because, and they're like an Auburn, like a Texas A&M, like Mississippi State, because it's got the ag school. It's got, you know, engineering. It's so similar. We got to be careful. In my opinion, and y'all are right. We got to bring back the rivalries. And 100 years ago, the Southern Conference, Tommy, had 23 members, going from Virginia to Texas and everywhere in between. In 1933, 10 years later, the SEC was founded. 1953, 54, the ACC. So we've been here before, but you talked about what I meant about Syracuse. Why not swap them out? I don't know, say send them to the Big 12. That doesn't make any more sense, but somehow I don't think the SEC wants to destroy the ACC because we're in the same, you know, in Atlanta, they call it Braves country.
Right. You know, I've spent quite a few hours, especially like when I'm driving in the car on a long road trip or something, like thinking in my mind how I would try to handle this whole footprint of college sports and what makes the most sense. And look, guys, none of us are experts. Nobody knows all the political ongoings that's going on behind all the different conferences or whatever. But one thing I've always thought of was like the NFL does it, like just by like areas of the country. Like, what if you just got rid of conferences altogether? Like there's no ACC Big Ten. First of all, the names don't make sense anymore anyway, right? You got the Big Ten and they're full of people. They don't make sense. It's like why not just make like the Southeast, you know, the Southeast, make the Northeast, make the Midwest, and just make the regions of the countries divided up, put the big schools in those things and let them play out that way. Forget the conferences. Look, who can even tell me the last like 4 ACC regular season champions in football? Like nobody even really cares. Like you see those games. I mean, the SEC championship game is big. I mean, it makes because you have to get into the Final Four. Now they're expanding that or whatever. So it's not a big deal, but the conference championship games, all that stuff is like everybody's just playing for the same thing. And that's to try to get into a bowl game or get into the Final Four or the final, whatever when they expand it now. So I've thought, could that be possible? Could you just break up the country into 5 different regions and let those people play? Now, granted, the Southeast would probably dominate for a long time if you just did a Southeast region of football, you know, but I don't know, like just get rid of all the ACC, get rid of the Big Ten, get rid of all the names that go with it and just say different regions of the country. And it's governed by somebody other than the NCAA, because we all know that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Is it?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Is there an athletic entity that's done something like that? Maybe it's called the NFL. Tommy, it sounds like the NFL model, doesn't it?
That's my point. That's my point.
Right. You have divisions. You have conferences. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's
you don't have a conference.
We're getting every single day. We speed closer and closer to a mini professional sports. And especially in major college football and basketball. So who knows? Right. Again, this is where that fundamental divide between between football and everything else. But you could put at places like NC State, North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, you can put basketball there as well. But there's such a divide there. And the amazing thing, guys, is everybody's pointed out, it's about money, right?
Yep.
Has there been a more fiscally mismanaged enterprise than major college athletics we're putting more money in the hands of the people who will throw ridiculous contract extensions at coaches after one good year. And 2 years later, when things go wrong, they'll fire them. They'll pay them a ridiculous buyout to not coach. These people are not good at managing their money. They're not good at making executive decisions. And yet, so what do they do with the money they built? They put another slide in. Well, they need another slide at Clemson in the football building. Yeah. Do we need a mini, instead of a miniature golf course out back, maybe we need a 9-hole course somewhere on campus for football players. It's ludicrous. Yeah. It's absurd. And that's where all this money was going to the arms race. Now they're concerned. Now we need it to go to NIL so we can pay the players so we can get them there to our campus to play for us. I don't know. The whole thing is spiraled so far away from the thing that grabbed us in the first place.
Yeah. Kevin, you hit on a great point there. And I just want to, like the whole coach's salary thing and all that stuff to me is just absurd because, then they have all these built-in bonuses. You get to the conference championship, you get an extra $1 million, do whatever, you get an extra $1 million, all this. So as a coach, and knowing that if you do get fired, you're still going to get paid. Why wouldn't you cheat like a SOB on recruiting and everything else? What do you have to lose? If you don't get caught, you win. You got a great team. You win. You make a ton of money. If you go to the conference championship and you go to the national championship, you make a ton of money. If you get caught, you get fired, you still make a ton of money.
Yeah, hold that thought. That we're on to something here because maybe tie in graduation rates and everything to the coaches' salaries. I got some ideas right after this on Sidelines. Okay, comments during the break from MJ made a good point because we're all in the bond business and outside of this is financial advisor. I said, isn't the sales manager's bonus tied into the production of all the salesmen? Of course it is. And he made a good point. How about the head coach? Let's say he's making $10 million a year and he has athletes that just quit and flunk out or whatever like that. They deduct the cost of his scholarship and his expenses from that coach's salary. All of a sudden, that $10 million is $6,123,919.25. That, as that Angus said when he pulled that arrow out of his sternum in Braveheart, that'll wake you up in the morning. But I think that will, guys, because unless you have accountability, and value, you're right. You got to put a value on money. But again, this panel here today, folks, Tommy Kane over in Atlanta, Pack Productions, Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, and Scarbo Knows, Frank Duffy Realty up in Atlanta, and Tiger Air, the air-conditioned football helmets. Unbelievable. Cooler heads will prevail, Frank.
For
now. But I think, Tommy, we're talking about the ACC, and I don't know how well Greg Sankey knows Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC. But again, you're in Atlanta, Tommy, Braves country. Nobody has married a professional franchise in with the Southeastern college sports fan like the Atlanta Braves. I don't know Alex Anthopoulos, but John Shearholtz, Bobby Cox, they call it the Braves way. It's unbelievable. I could see the SEC and the ACC saying, okay, you're right. We'll just form this Southeastern League like the old Southern Conference 100 years ago. I mean, why do we want to be at war with our neighbors in the Southeast?
Why not? Why not? Yeah. Why? I mean, just and take the Boston colleges and the Syracuses and all those people and say, you guys go do your own thing. Could you imagine a conference like a massive, just a Southeast conference of region of all those ACC and SEC schools and Clemson and Alabama playing every year in a regular season game, you got the Brainiacs were like Vanderbilt, Wake Forest every year. I mean, that kind of stuff. But I mean, you know, I think it would make sense, and then it would. And look, you were talking earlier about the money, and Kevin was talking about the money too. You know, all that money comes from the TV rights, and all that money comes from people paying for the TV, people paying for all that stuff. Guys, the TV footprint, and I'm not an expert here, but from people I know that are in the business still, like ESPNs of the world are not making money hand over fist anymore. When they started doing when the cable started getting cut and everybody started streaming everything, their revenues went way down. That's the reason why they're laying off the David Pollocks and the other people around the world and stuff like that and getting them out of the business, because they're just not making the money that they used to do. So at one point in time, where's all that money, all this TV rights money coming from? Is the advertising? Maybe, but not still. They were getting all their money off the subscribers and the people that were paying their cable bill.
Yep.
And because when I used to work at Fox Sports here in Atlanta, you know, we had 9 million subscribers around the Southeast and Fox Sports Southeast. And I think every one of our subscribers, if I remember correctly, I think in your cable bill, like 18 cents of your cable bill was for our network, our channel. So you do the math, 9 million subscribers, 18 cents every month. That's a ton of money coming in, right? Well, all of a sudden those cable lines are being cut and that's not coming in. ESPN was the most expensive station on your network when you were paying your cable bills. I think at the time, and this is going back 20 years, but I think they were like almost $2 out of your cable bill was ESPN. That's all gone. So, you know, they're getting a little bit of trickle from here and there from the YouTubes and stuff like that, YouTube streaming and Hulu, but it's not the same. So I don't know where all that money's coming from to pay all these television rights. And I'm wondering how it's going to sustain itself over the years.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm with y'all. I mean, go back 15 years ago, there were 100 million people subscribed to ESPN. That number now is about 71 million. And I'll tell you, 26 million people now have ESPN Plus. But you go anywhere, and I'm trying to convince my 88 and 95-year-old parents to quit using DirecTV. Okay, I said, why don't we just let you stream? I'll get my man George Gaddis Home Innovation, gaddishome.com to come do it. Cut your bill in half, and they're like, no. We like it the way
that discussion with my wife every month. I used to be the DirecTV guy because I wanted the NFL Sunday ticket. Now all of a sudden the roles have switched. I'm like, we need to dump that. She goes, no, I like Lifetime.
But I'm going to tell you, Tommy, I wish I would love it if we could all be on a TV network. Like, it's growing and we're getting more and more, out there in front of people. But I'm going to tell you, I've heard more stuff that makes sense today from y'all three, but I can see that happening to where we have the Southeast. I mean, look, people in the Southeast, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Georgia, it's already there. I mean, we're not, SEC's not but you got
the subject. Rob, tell me a subject that's more interesting to more people and so more difficult to monetize ever. It's crazy how much interest is in collegiate sports and pro sports. I mean, we're all absorbed by it, but yet it's so hard. I mean, look at you got this great show that I've been personally doing for 4 years now, all this cast of characters, and you're figuring out how to monetize it. Scarbo just recently went out and launched his own platform. I mean, it's like, how do you monetize something that has such great interest, but yet it's so difficult to do? And to Tommy's point, where's all this money coming from? These deals are incredible. I mean, is it the advertisers? Is it the eyeballs? I mean, it's such a nebulous thing to quantify and to try to sell. And so you're right, Rob. You're the prime example of this stuff. If you could crack the code on how to blow this thing up and blow it open, I know you and Aubrey's bank account would greatly benefit. So it's a weird deal. It is not only from the standpoint of the conferences and of the sport itself, and to Tommy's point, whether we go to divisions like the NFL, I don't know, but if you can harness and figure out how to quantify this content, I mean, I even thought about it the other day. I was like, what if you had writers like Kevin and Buddy that actually, I mean, you're almost down to the point of where there's no real hard newspapers anymore. Hell, send it to a person that actually reads it and does it online for 3 hours. I was thinking about that maybe as a content portal. It's just, there's a lot of codes to crack. And if you can crack this and you're doing it on Tommy on a conference basis, I mean, sky's the limit. But all you need to try to do is just get the content to the people who want it, to absorb it.
Yeah.
The fans. That's what, like Buddy always talks about. It's our game. Get it to me in the way that I want it, and stop screwing with my game. Stop screwing with the things that I think are so great about this. There would be power for that for the consumer. There really would be.
Frank. Yeah, Frank, I think you're dead on with some of that stuff. But I also agree that that they are screwing with our game. We're the fans. We're the ones that buy the tickets. We're the ones that buy the paraphernalia and everything. And we're the ones that tailgate and spend the money to go to games. And they are screwing with it. Like, to me, I love college football and college basketball. It's my favorite two things, right? Above, even beyond all pros and everything else. I love college football and college basketball. I just love it. But it has lost some of its luster for me over the past couple of years. I was telling Rob this earlier during basketball season. I follow NC State basketball all the time. Every beginning of every year, I have to look at the roster and read about every kid we have, because half of them, 3/4 of them, I came in from different schools. I've got no allegiance to those kids. I don't even know who they are. I've got to read their bios and look at, but because they haven't been there since they're freshmen until they're juniors, and I can't establish that relationship as a fan with them, as far as following them and pulling for them and wanting them to get better, because every year it's like a whole new lineup. And it's taken a lot of the love of the game and the love of the sport away from me. Do I still cheer for him? I still watch the games? Of course I do. But I've got no relationship with a guy that just transferred in from Appalachian State to come play for us. I'm like, I don't even know who the kid is. So it's ruining it. As a fan, it has definitely diminished what I think the overall love of the game is. I still love it, still watch it, but I don't have as much personal attachment to it. And I think it's the same thing for college football, So,
and college baseball as well. I'll fess up. After I didn't know who Paul Skeens was until the second week of the season. Honest to goodness, I didn't know about this kid that came in from Air Force. I mean, I heard he was decent. I had no idea.
Well, wait, here's an interesting.
He's starting for the Pittsburgh Pirates. You watch before this season's out. He'll start for the Pirates one game.
Here's something interesting. You think about the University of New Jersey at Durham, Duke. That is an interesting thing. And Tommy, they don't have a lot of fans on the street in North Carolina, but NC State does. And I think what we need to do is really become myopic and focus. And Kevin, kind of carry us out. We got about 10 minutes left, but let me say this real quick. To everybody listening, everybody watching, we appreciate you more than we can tell you. Our sponsors, we're blessed beyond belief, and we live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. Don't ever forget that, because we have free speech. I've heard more stuff today that just makes sense. It resonates. But people in the southeastern footprint, Braves country, okay, North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, we're already there together. Kevin, you're putting out great content. Tommy, you're putting out great content. Frank, Kevin, write us a story. Birmingham, give me the lead for the story about, hey, man, I've got this idea. It hit me between 8 and 10 a.m. Central on Sidelines. How are we going to save? Tommy's right. All of y'all are right. Now let's make it happen, because I know it sounds cool to talk about money, but who owns college sports?
Well, I can tell you this, and I hear this a lot in feedback from readers. They're not as interested in reading about TV contracts and the financial aspect of college sports and realignment. I think they get tired of that. I think it goes back to, as Tommy was saying, the thing that saves the game is the game. What happens on the court, on the field, between the lines, when they turn the scoreboards on, that's what saves the game. That's what still moves us. That's what moves us to watch the games on television on a Saturday, to park in front of the TV and watch 3, 4, 4 or 5
That's
games
why
a
we're
day.
giddy. That's why we're
Pac-12
giddy.
after dark became a thing because people didn't get enough college football by 10:30 or 11 o'clock on Saturday night, and we went looking for something else. And we found all this goofy, crazy, nutty stuff happening out west in these Pac-12 games. It might be in Corvallis, it might be in Pullman, it might be in places we've never been to or couldn't even imagine going to. But that pulled us in, and it always comes down to that. And whatever we can do to preserve that is what should be paramount, because that's why TV loves sports. You don't know the outcome.
It's the best reality TV ever. It's the best reality TV ever.
Bingo.
It's the greatest unscripted drama there is.
That's right.
You know what we need? What we need.
Hey, look, it's like I'm going to take this. I'm going to take us highbrow. Okay, I'm going to lift the intellectual nature of the show for a moment.
Watch out!
Look,
See you later. Good night, everyone.
Listen,
remember, you got an LSU guy on the dais.
When I was younger, I used to love the theater. I used to love to go to plays. I went to a summer school when I was at Troy. I got to go to a summer school at Oxford University in England, and I went to Stratford-on-Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace, and I saw Macbeth, and what an incredible experience in my life. But it's like I love Hamlet. Hamlet's my favorite Shakespearean play. But you know what? And I'll watch it. I'll go see it. But I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen in the end. Everybody dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: everybody dies at the end. But when I go to an Alabama LSU game, I don't know what's going to happen.
There'll be death. There'll be death. It just won't be everybody.
Well, there will be blood. There will be pain. There will be agony.
I know a few livers have gone down a few of those games. So yeah, you're right.
It's like every time you watch the Titanic, we know what's going to happen.
Duke, North Carolina in basketball. It's compelling because you can come back from 8 points down with 17 seconds left. Is that the famous one, Tommy?
Jason Williams.
Yeah. So it's there. The thing that, again, I keep going back to the thing that grabbed us in the first place. Don't screw with that. Don't keep that as pure as you can. And I know it's hard because now the players have recognized their value. We're not going to turn back the clock. That Tuberville Mansion bill that says you can't transfer for 3 years, that's not going to happen. No, that is not going to get passed. They're not going to go back to the days when you couldn't have a one-time free transfer, if you will, with no sit out. So those things are coming, and it's only going to get more. The players are only going to get more money at some point. This is where I think the point where people will lose it, I think, is if they say they're employees. If they say these are employees of the university and we're going to pay them a salary, I think that would be the breaking point for a lot of people.
And other than howling at the moon like we've done for about 3 years, when Buddy comes on and it's our sport, we're going to hold it. I feel like we're kind of like peasants across the moat throwing rocks across at the big castle. But there is one thing that we have, and the Disneys and the Targets and the Bud Lights of the world should have taken notice. We've got our buying power, and we can purchase or not purchase or choose to go or not go. And that's about all the consuming public has to change any of this trajectory. And the power is the lure of being at NC State when Carolina comes in to play that first home game, or being in Alabama and Auburn for the Iron Bowl. It's too strong of a pull to have us to boycott to have any sort of play. I mean, we are in the lifeboat unless we pick up the oars ourselves. And what's going to doom us is our own love of what makes us want to go and be a part. It's going to be hard to have that willpower and staying power to say, you're ruining what I love, so I'm going to stay away from what I love for the bigger picture. I just don't see us having that in there. We're not going to lose the battle to win the war because the battle's too attractive.
Well, let me say this. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, Scarbo knows, Tommy Kane, Pack Productions, Frank Duffy, all of y'all. I got to tell y'all, unbelievable. We got to get this panel together again. But I'm going to tell you, you can look at the passion on Tommy's face and Kevin's and Frank's and mine. What we need maybe is a public TV station that's not owned by giant sponsors that basically are telling them what to say, where it's a populist movement of the fans getting on there who are not bought off and controlled like string puppets and will tell the truth. What we need is the truth. Jack Nicholson's right. You can't handle the truth. The American public, you're right. We love the games. Tommy's right. It hurts. I can tell Tommy, he loves NC State. He ain't going to change loyalties. He will be buried in Wolfpack red, hopefully a long time from now. But he's got a wife, he's got daughters. He's raising them to love that school.
And Rob, the potential loss of that, you can see it in his physical language.
Yeah. And it is.
It's almost a painful thing. I mean, you've been under the gun this week, Tommy, with all this talk. It has to be measured.
Yeah. Look, it is. Tommy, come back on. We're going to do this again here soon because I'm going to tell you, a lot of people out there going, well, it's just the way it is. Well, you know what? We don't have to accept that. You know, what did Sherlock Holmes' assistant, Dr. Watson, one time said? There's nothing more deceptive in life than an obvious clue. And we've pointed that out today. So, guys,
I'll leave it with this. It's just we got to take the idea of all the money, and kind of put that aside a little bit and do what's right for the sport. The money will always be there. The money will always come. The money will always but just do what's right for the sport, so that the fans of like all of us will still enjoy the game and still pay the money to go. And just do what's right for the sport. The money will always be there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it's so true. If you want the money and that's all you think about, you're not going to get it. You got to do the work. The money will come. I mean, y'all are right.
And if they lose us, they can forget the money because that's what.
Yeah. Hey guys, look, man, we ran out of time. Carol Burnett, I'm so glad we had this time together, but we got to go. Awesome stuff, folks, and we'll be back on Monday. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Free speech, folks. Respect it and love your conference. We're out of here. See you Monday.
Go Tigers.